Welcome to the flight levels. It's pretty straightforward who to call for an IFR clearance at a towered airport. But what about if we want to depart IFR from a non-towered airport? Is calling flight service our only option? Is there someone we can call to cut out the middleman? Today, we're covering 5 ways to pick up an IFR clearance from a non-towered airport. Let's get to it. If you're enjoying this content, please hit that like button, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. Before we go through these methods from a pilot's point of view, let's take a step back and look at the process through the controller's perspective. Every time a controller issues an approach clearance or a departure clearance, they are blocking the airspace surrounding an airport. Ideally, IFR arrivals and departures have to block the airspace for the least amount of time possible to accommodate other IFR arrivals and departures. The controller can also be very busy, so issuing IFR clearances can take up a surprisingly long amount of time, especially since they have to listen to readbacks as well. This takes up valuable frequency time. As you'll see, there are methods of picking up your clearance that don't involve talking to a controller. And these are great because they don't waste valuable frequency time. Though, as we introduce more people into the conversation, this does increase the risk of an error in the readback as more people are playing telephone. Let's consider these factors as we progress through the different methods. When picking up your IFR clearance, it is important not to make the controller play 20 questions. Every time you reach out, you need to provide the following information. Your call sign, where you are, you're on the ground at such airport. What do you want? You want to pick up an IFR clearance to your destination. What runway will you use? This could change what clearance is issued. Are you ready to depart now or in 15 minutes? This will change whether they provide you a hold for release versus a clearance void time. If you leave out any of these details, the controller will have to ask you. Please do not make them ask you. My favorite way? Calling the controller directly on the VHF frequency. It's the fastest way to get moving. Now, some will argue that these frequencies are not to be used for picking up clearances. As a former center controller, I want to set the record straight. So long as the controller is not slammed, they want you to call them on those frequencies for your clearance. It completely eliminates the middleman and reduces the chances of a telephone game error. But here's the catch. You need to be able to ensure that you can reach them from the pavement. Before trying this method, you need to verify there's a transmitter within range of the airport. The best way to do this is to take a look at the back of the chart supplement. The frequencies are listed by center. For example, let's say you want to depart IFR from Montrose, Colorado. If we take a look in the back of the chart supplement, we see Montrose, Colorado on 127.1. Remember, the bold numbers are for high altitude sectors, so don't call those for your clearance off the ground. You may also see this same frequency listed on the airport page in the chart supplement for Montrose. And this is true, but there's an important distinction. Let's take a look at the airport page for Telluride, Colorado. You will notice there's a similar listing that says Denver Center Approach Departure Control 125.35. All this means is that the frequency provides radar services to aircraft arriving and departing the airport. It does not mean you can reach the controller while on the ground. If we take a look at the listing of transmitter sites for Denver Center, you will not find any locations at Telluride, Colorado. Therefore, to pick up your IFR clearance on the ground at Telluride, you need to call the phone number, and we'll get to that method in a moment. You'll also notice the list in the back of the chart supplement is just for center frequencies. Now, there are non-towered airports inside TRACONs that are within range of a controller's transmitter. However, they are not published. Do you know any non-towered airports where you can reach a TRACON controller? Let me know in the comments. In the absence of a center transmitter being nearby, the next best method is to use the phone number listed in the chart supplement for the airport. This does not put you in contact with the radar controller. Instead, the person on this position will coordinate with the radar controller. They essentially work as a middleman. This is great because it frees up the frequency. On the other hand, having the same clearance copied and read through a middleman does increase risk of copying errors. I will never forget one time I was with a student picking up an IFR clearance through a phone number. The person on the line read my student their clearance with the departure frequency 121.5. My student and I immediately knew this frequency was not correct. If you know how we knew this so quickly, share with everyone else in the comments. The next two options involve relaying through Leidos flight service. These are perfectly acceptable methods to pick up a clearance, though they are slow and inefficient. RCOs, or remote communications outlets, are transmitters for Leidos flight service, and you can reach them conveniently through your VHF radio. You can find where these are located in the back of the chart supplement just before the list of center transmitters. Instead of being listed by center, these are listed by radio identification. Since flight service was consolidated over a decade ago, it is unclear to me why the FAA still uses these legacy identifiers. Why do you think we're holding on to these radio names? They can also be seen on the low on route charts. If an RCO is not within line of sight of your airport, there is still the phone number 1-800-WX-BRIEF. Yes, that phone number still does exist. However, as you remember, it is still painfully slow. However, it is still an acceptable method of receiving your IFR clearance off the ground. And this brings us to our last method of picking up your IFR clearance, which is departing VFR and calling the controller once airborne. There are some limitations you need to accept before taking off VFR though. The first of which is you need to be able to comply with all of the rules of VFR until climbing to at least the controller's minimum IFR altitude. If the weather gives you any reason to doubt your ability to comply with this, then you need to receive your IFR clearance through one of the earlier methods while still on the ground. Even beyond the weather, it is entirely possible the controller may be too busy to issue an IFR clearance. Just because you have an IFR clearance on file does not give you priority. Remember, controller's duty priority goes to current IFR traffic. Providing service to VFR traffic is only on a workload permitting basis. So there you have it, 5 methods to pick up your IFR clearance at a non-towered airport. Which method do you feel is superior? Let me know in the comments. A quick note before we wrap up. After years of issuing clearances as a controller and teaching pilots to read them back as a flight instructor, I've created an air traffic control clearance trainer. It lets pilots practice realistic IFR clearances on their own time, especially useful if radio work or English aren't your strong suit. If that sounds helpful, I've put a link in the description. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my next video. Be sure to check out flight-levels.com and remember, don't just fly, climb to the flight levels. If you enjoyed this video, click here to see who's responsible for terrain separation on an IFR departure. You're gonna love it. It cuts out the middleman and all the other things I'm supposed to say. And this... It's the fastest way to get moving. You can do better than this.